For words of encouragement from Pastor Stephen Traxel from Grace Apostolic Church.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Lord, we're so thankful today for your goodness and mercy to us. We're so thankful for this day that you've allowed us to be here to gather together as men and women in this city for specific purposes of leading and guiding. Lord, we pray before we get started that we would seek your counsel and your wisdom, that you would help us not to seek our own will, but we would seek your will for all things to do for this city. We pray a blessing upon our council members, our mayor, those that make decisions, those that help lead this great city, that might be a blessing to our families. Touch our husbands and wives and children. Bless our school administrators, first responders, those that put their life on the line every day to make sure this place is safe. I pray a special blessing upon the city of Clawson today, not just for today, but God, from here to eternity, Lord, until you come back, that you would bless this city. Let us lead and guide other cities to show them the love that we have in this place, that God, a city with a big heart is not just a tagline, but it's something we really live by, that we would love one another and treat each other as we would want to be treated. We seek your face and continuously seek your wisdom in all that we do. Help us not to hold grudges or God, keep score, but God, we know that we're serving a God that's bigger than all of these small details of life, that we put our trust in you always and focus our thoughts and our dreams and our prayers towards you. We know we're in a city with many young people. We pray that we would make the choices today that our children can stand on tomorrow, that we might follow after your leading all the days of our life. We give you the praise and glory. Humble us today as we seek your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Traxel. Roll call, please.
Mayor Milan.
I'm here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Councilmember Shepard.
Here.
As a quorum.
Next item on the agenda will be approval of our agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepard.
Yes.
We have an agenda.
Next up is public comment for items on the agenda. If you're here and you'd like to speak towards anything that is on the agenda, you may speak now. Come to the podium. We'll allot you 3 minutes. State your name and address, and we'll be happy to allow you conversation time. Otherwise, if you have something that is not on the agenda, you can speak later in the meeting. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
Hi, Erin Redmond. I wanted to speak in regards to the Airbnb, the short-term rental. And I want to thank you very much for taking my input. Since then, I have done a little bit of research, and I do apologize. I'm not trying to catch you off guard with everything that I'm about to discuss, because I just haven't had time to reach out. I was still doing reading and things throughout the day. So my point to this is to maybe consider just take into account what I'm going to say, and possibly bringing in the possibility of the Planning Commission or some other to do further research on short-term rentals. There has been, as you already know, a lot discussed about, let's see, I forget what bill it is, HR, I don't recall exactly which bill, House Bill 4722. However, there are multiple bills that are out right now that are circulating. One of them is, there's a coalition approach as well. So with that said, I'll start by kind of giving some background and a little bit why this is important to me as a Clawson resident, and kind of go into things that I see maybe we could kind of reform on. I realize that the state of Michigan might preempt any possibility to zone at city levels. However, putting zoning in prior to would only go back to the state of Michigan. Like if we had zoning, unless I'm incorrect, if we put zoning in place and our zoning laws did anything to be more strict than the state of Michigan, my understanding is that Michigan law would, fall into place, and that would be null and void. A lot of things that I found in many other cities, there are 3 states that do preempt cities' abilities to do zoning of any kind. Florida, Arizona, and I forget the third one. Just trust that there's 3. Florida, however, has gone back because of the outcry from residents and tightened up things and given cities back their right to go ahead and zone, because cities are more in touch, as we all know, with their residents and have the ability to really adjust and know what zoning and how it's appropriate to fit their city's needs. As you know, as a city, we not only have the right to protect our citizens, we also have an obligation with that. So I do believe that some things we should consider are different ownerships. There is the owner-occupied zoning that would allow owner occupants it kind of almost functions as a Airbnb, or a bed and breakfast. And that truly gives the property rights to the owner. And I know property rights are a big contention within the Airbnb zoning ordinance. However, as many of us know, once you are in a commercial in a business, the property rights aren't the same as they might be for a resident. So I asked that might be considered in the Airbnb zoning ordinance. With Clawson being a secondary market, almost, we have Birmingham, we have Royal Oak, we have other strong cities around us. I could see how institutional investors may fall onto Clawson, and I'm speaking towards not what we're seeing now, but the possibilities that having a zoning ordinance that is kind of free reign might allow for us to become more of a rental market because we have strong cities surrounding us. Institutional and foreign investors made up, I don't know, it was more like 20% of the home purchased last year. So there's an increase in investors looking to not only do Airbnbs, just to purchase homes. So I think we need to consider the changing dynamics there. It's a very lucrative business opportunity. Some things that even the state of Michigan in their proposed bill addresses is like a 30% cap on overall Airbnbs. And that's not something, unless I read it too quickly, that we don't have addressed in our ordinance. I'm sure I'm going over time. Am I going over
You are, sorry.
I don't know if I can send you some notes. I at least have, and this is from the Michigan Municipal League. They have a proposed coalition approach, and I did print, I forget how many copies I printed out. I think I did enough for everybody. But they have a coalition approach, which they're trying to propose to the state of Michigan to kind of meet the needs of both cities as well as what Michigan's trying to achieve. And I thought it might be helpful. I found it on Michigan Municipal League. I thought it might be helpful for you guys to at least look it over and consider, and maybe I'll send you something. I don't want to go over my time, but
We're going to stick around?
Yeah, are you going to be here, Erin?
I will be here because, I have a lot more. I have like 5 more pages of notes, but I don't want to be disrespectful and go over. But there's just a lot of things that, in the end, what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of things that we haven't considered. And I think that it deserves, a further discussion anyway. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, and perhaps we can, if we suspend rules, we might be able to give you a little input when we get to that topic specifically. Sure. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, then we will close public comment and we will move on to the next item, which is consideration of approving the following consent agenda. First item is minutes of the regular city council meeting held on Tuesday, August 18th, 2022, as presented. The next item would be the list of bills in the amount of $849,421.26.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Milan?
Yes.
Sorry. Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you. Next up would be our presentations and proclamations time, and we're up for a great joy because our state representative Padma Kupa is here to provide us with a legislative update.
Thank you, Mayor Milan and council members and all the staff and supporting people. Just want to say thank you for your patience as I figure out what I'm presenting to tonight is long overdue. We've had some crazy session days, but you do know that we approved the state budget well before the time, early hours of June 30th. We have not met since then. But we are expected to meet again on September 21st. So June 30th to September 21st. I have been in district doing a lot of catching up on some in-district activities and also working on legislation for the rest of the year. We had to get all our bills in for this year by August 31st. We were not allowed to request any more bills after August 31st. So whatever I needed to get in, this term I've sponsored 36 bills. One of them this year went into effect. It was the tampon tax repeal. So I know it doesn't affect many people in this room, but hopefully a lot of constituents will appreciate that we no longer have to pay taxes on feminine hygiene products because it's one less thing that we need to pay taxes on. On the next time we meet, I'm hopeful that I will be introducing the International Day of Peace commemorative resolution. I'm allowed 2 every year, and typically to celebrate water, because I came here for the cars. I'm an engineer, but I stayed for the lakes. I think our water and our Great Lakes are the best, and so I usually commemorate World Water Day in March. And typically, again, something that you may not all know, but Women's Equality Day is August 26th. We did not have sessions, so I had to pick and choose what could I introduce, and so I'm choosing to introduce the International Day of Peace resolution, which is a resolution about the International Day of Peace. I think we could use some peace in this world, especially with what's going on in other parts of the world. So I did mention the speaker is not allowing any further bills to be requested. One set of bills that I did request came from a story that happened in Troy where a victim of a crime was relocated, and yet somehow her information became available to the perpetrator after he got out. And so we're the only state, I believe, that does not have a victim relocation and fund, and so we're looking into legislation. So I have some meetings on that. I've already requested those bills, but they're not in the final state to be introduced in the House floor. We are not expecting a lot of session to happen between now and the next 10 weeks. One of the things that I am still very persistent about is my first piece of legislation that I introduced both in my first term and in my second term, which is Justice for Allie, which is to protect vulnerable adults from online sexual predators. I think this is not a partisan issue, and I don't know why we're taking so long to pass this. The family that requested, Allie Hayes' family, that came forward and told their story needs to be valued, and their story needs to be. So if you would like to help me, please write to Graham Filler at house.mi.gov and request that he give these bills a vote in the Judiciary Committee. We've already had a hearing. I am still holding monthly in-district office hours. The next one is on September 26th at 4:30 p.m. at the Troy Community Center. I do want to give you some numbers from the budget. The economic development site validation for Oakland County was $2 million. $250,000 was given to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. $2.48 million were given to the Oakland County Child Welfare Day Treatment Pilot Program. We also have, in the city of Rochester in Oakland County, Memorial Grove All Abilities Park, and also in Oakland County, Clara Miller Park Playground, Village of Wolverine Lake, Martin Road Park Walkways and Pavilion for the city of Ferndale. All of these are in Oakland County. None of them are in House District 41. However, we do have, they're nearby, so we can get to them. One of the big things that I'm very happy about is $9,150 per pupil funding was for every child in every public school. This is the highest amount in the state ever. And we also have $214 per pupil mental health and school safety funding for every child in every public school district. In addition to that, we also have additional funding to meet individual students' needs for the 200,000 special ed students and 710 students who are at risk. We have 1,300 more free preschool slots in the Great Start Readiness Program. Something that I think is really important here in Clawson is that $250 million were allocated for school infrastructure improvements. Troy also benefits from this. $10,000 in tuition for 2,500 Michigan educators every year. We are also spending $54.8 billion on general budget to fund aspects of the state government next year, including road repairs and payments to local governments. That's up from the $50.7 billion initially approved for the current year. The speaker that came up earlier was talking about Michigan Municipal League. I want to do a hat tip to MML and my colleagues, Representatives Jim Ellison and Mark Tisdale. For the last several years, I've been talking about having a rainy day fund so that when there is an additional problem with recession or anything like that, that we have additional monies to help our state and local governments, our cities, villages, and townships. And unfortunately, I didn't get to introduce the bills, but they are there. And I believe the bill numbers, if you are interested in looking, are 6133 and 6134. Again, Representative Ellison and Representative Tisdale. So it's a bipartisan effort. I think it's really important. In Troy itself, I remember we pretty much had to cut our police force in half because of the recession in 2010. And so I'd like to see that not happen again. We have $750 million on a new grant program to help local governments address legacy debt and unfunded liabilities, which I think benefits a lot of communities across the state. And $75 million will be spent on blight removal initiatives, including competitive grants for local communities. So that's something that the city staff might be interested in looking into. And then $30 million to help meet critical public safety staffing needs with funding for police academies, scholarships, and cadet salaries. It's something that, again, I was championing from my first term. Senator Winnie Brinks on the west side of the state and I introduced legislation because we are having challenges with recruiting police, and one of those things that we can do is to provide scholarships for recruitment. I know there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah, the $750 million for local pension system grants. My last office hours, and I speak specifically to our local clerk, city clerk, because I really appreciate how much all of them have done so to educate people about the process, the election process. At my last office hours, I had a person that came and insisted that she was sent an absentee ballot. And so we put her in touch, because she was from Troy, we put her in touch with our city clerk in Troy to make sure she understood that she was not sent a ballot without her requesting it. She was only sent an absentee ballot application in 2020. And so if you have any questions about these things and they come to my office, I will be sure to let you know, because I am very concerned that people understand the whole election process and that it was done very safely and securely by our wonderful clerks across the state. Any questions?
I have a great question. You rattled off a lot of dollars that are available to communities. How can you assist our community with capturing some of those lot of dollars?
Sure. I will work with whoever is focusing on that. If you put the requests in for those competitive grants, I can work with staff to make sure that they go to the right department. Joe and August both have my cell number. They know to text me if there are any questions in the process itself.
Anyone
I'm
else?
always looking out for the little city with the big heart. I will be no longer your representative at the end of this year. I hope to be able to come and give you one final update before the year ends. I've always felt as a Troy resident that Clawson has been my home for all my coffee meetings that I have to take with people who want to meet me about things. There's so many restaurants here that I come to. Know that you'll always be in my heart. My small businesses of the month. I love coming to give to so many of the wonderful small businesses in the area. I still have 3 more months to give those recognitions out. So if you have anyone to nominate, please go send me an email at padmakupa@house.mi.gov or go to kupa.housedems.com and let me know. And if you need to call me, 517-373-1783. Any resident can leave a message, and we will get back to you in a timely manner.
Great. Thank you for your service. Thank you for giving us this great update.
Okay. And Joe and August, please, if you're applying for any of those grants, please let my office know. We will help you. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next up is a proclamation recognizing September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America embodies the principles of our constitutional republic and the liberties it proclaims, and whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this most important document and its memorable anniversary, and to the civic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Paula Milan, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Clawson in the state of Michigan, do hereby proclaim this week of September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. And be it further resolved that we ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution by protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, knowing that lost rights may never be regained. Next will be a proclamation recognizing September 2022 as National Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas September is known as National Suicide Prevention Month and is intended to help raise awareness surrounding suicide prevention resources available in the community. And whereas World Suicide Prevention Day is observed each year on September 10th. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background. And whereas according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 45,979 people died by suicide in the U.S. in 2020, 1 death every 11 minutes. And whereas according to the CDC, 12.2 million adults across the U.S. seriously thought about suicide, 3.2 million adults made a suicide plan, 1.2 million adults attempted suicide. And whereas every year, thousands of individuals die by suicide, leaving behind friends and family members to navigate the tragedy of loss. Often, feelings of shame and stigma prevent them from talking openly. And whereas 988 has been designated as a new 3-digit dialing code that will route callers to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, now active across the United States. And whereas the National Action Allowance for Suicide Prevention is using the hashtag #BeThere to educate social media followers about the many actions that one can take to support a person who is struggling. And whereas Oakland County Community Health Network has been an active and engaged member of the Oakland County Suicide Prevention Task Force since 2011, and whereas Oakland County Community Health Network is committed to being a zero suicide organization and cultivating a network of providers who are engaged in the zero suicide philosophy. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Clawson hereby recognizes September 2022 as National Suicide Prevention Month. Clawson joins the Oakland County Community Health Network in calling on our citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of suicide prevention and the need for the appropriate and accessible services to assist individuals in crisis. Hard to go on from that one. If anyone's been affected by someone who's made that decision or dealt with someone who's fighting that decision, it's really tough. But if you're that person, just know people love you and you're important. End of my soapbox. Next up will be an explanation regarding the historical practices of the police chief hiring process.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last meeting, I was asked to provide some insight on this item. Explanation regarding procedures for appointing the chief of police. The bottom line, there are no established procedures for selecting a chief of police other than the Charter Section 4.12 that deems this shall be the responsibility of the city manager. Additionally, we have our own city attorneys supporting written opinion. For those not aware, the Clawson community has what I believe is a benefit of having 3 previous city managers that actually still reside here in town. I spoke with each of them on this matter. 1 never had the opportunity to appoint a police chief. 2 did have the opportunity. 1 of them appointed an interim police chief unilaterally and was approved by council. The other used an interview panel of employees and outsiders, and their selection was approved by council. In public administration, a policy approach of one size fits all is often a disservice. Each circumstance, each candidate, and each city manager is unique. What is arguably a good approach in a particular circumstance and for a particular city manager may not transcend time and various other variables to be a viable and replicable procedure. Hence, I would debate there is merit on not having a rigid formal selection method required for use by future city managers. However, historically, the city has promoted the police chief from within. The only time I was able to identify a chief coming from outside was when the city was considering outsourcing their police services to the county. Then an interim was brought in with an intent to stay 6 to 12 months, but ended up staying as interim for 4 years. My process is similar to the one that was used to select our last permanent chief, Chief Scott Sarvello. The city manager at the time assembled an interview panel that included an outside and unknown police chief and an outside and unknown public official, along with a second Clawson city employee and the city manager himself. The city manager was committed to go with the consensus of the group, which was the selection of Scott Sarvello. On my watch, as of last Thursday, our 2 internal candidates had interviews with an impartial panel that consisted of 2 outside unknown city managers and 2 outside unknown police chiefs. I was not part of that interview process, but their input will have great influence on my final decision. Both internal candidates will have their one-on-one interview with me this Thursday, and my intent is to have a choice made and shared with you before this weekend.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Everyone's good? Okay, thank you for that. Next up will be consideration of designating a delegate and alternate as the city's official voting representative to the Michigan Municipal League Annual Convention in Muskegon, Michigan on October 19th through 21st, 2022. The Michigan Municipal League's convention, as I said, October 19th, 2021. We, as Clawson, as a member of the MML are requested to designate a member of our governing body as a delegate with one member as the alternate. The city council is tasked with making this determination on who will represent the city of Clawson. I will volunteer if no one else wants to do it. I would kind of like to go. But if anyone else has their heart set on it, let's talk.
My heart is not set on it.
But it's Muskegon.
I don't know if I'll be able to drive out there, to be honest with you.
I can go, it's not a problem.
Okay, so
Does the two people go?
I don't
As an alternate.
think, yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
it's a
attendee
delegate
and an
and an
alternate.
So what does that entail? Delegate has voting rights, the alternate can attend but does not. Is that,
Yeah,
okay.
yes. Oftentimes, I've seen city managers tag along too, just for the classes and the education stuff.
Yep.
I'll motion the mayor be appointed. Where's that? There it is. What was it, to appoint Mayor Milan as the delegate and myself as the alternate for the Michigan Municipal League Convention on October 19 through 22, 2022.
Support.
Roll call, please.
We're at Councilman Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Shepherd and Anderson are off the hook.
I don't know, you just recently volunteered for something with MERS, which cannot be more fun than MML. There's just no way.
There's no way. My MML is much more fun.
That's what, I mean, I'm not thinking it's going to be fun, but it's.
Plus, downtown
Gotta
Muskegon's.
beat MERS.
Muskegon's like a model right now for economic development, what they've done with their downtown. It's like supposed to be really special to see, so
Okay.
enjoy.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. And next up will be consideration of approving the proposal from R.W. Mead and Sons for repairs to the council chamber rooftop unit air conditioning unit.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the proposal for repair of the council chambers rooftop unit air conditioning as provided by R.W. Mead and Sons at a cost of $5,431 and no cents.
Support.
Any discussion? No?
Just so it's being repaired, is there any other external screening that's required for it? Or are we in code in that regard for our ordinance?
These guys.
Oh, I know.
The RW Mead assessed the situation, and there are two parts that need to be replaced. We considered cannibalizing. I think we've actually have done that from other units to keep things afloat, but it's only a matter of time before that catches up with us.
Do you have the controls down here finally? Because I remember every time it went out, they'd have to go on the roof to reset it.
I'll defer to Nick on that one.
It depends what goes out. So when there is a power outage, we may have to go on the roof to reset it. But generally, we have the computer system in the building department to adjust it.
Why do we buy the stuff so we don't have to go on the roof and just?
I think that would probably be when those are at the end of their life cycle. I want to say, based on here, it was about $50,000 for each of those, and these are only a couple years old. So I think when we get to that point to totally redo the heating and cooling at City Hall, we'll probably consider that. But right now, it just does not make financially sense to revamp the entire
You said
process.
2 years old?
A few years old.
They're not even halfway through their life cycle.
No, but you can bring the unit down there and we don't have to pay for a repairman to go up on the roof to reset it. They can do it from down there.
My understanding, and I can provide greater insight on in my Friday feedback, but my understanding that is actually the operation of it is separate from getting this one. The control of it is actually separate from the operation of this unit. Two different problems.
And at this point, we don't have RW Mead come out to reset the units. We can do that internally here with our staff.
So replacement, can they give an estimate at
It
this
was over
point?
$50,000. That was just spitballing it.
Okay.
Those are big units. You're talking cranes. You're talking a lot of work.
That's not on our CIP yet, right?
I don't believe that the AC unit replacement is anywhere near the CIP.
Okay. So next year, or should it be long-term for 5-year?
I think we have at least another 10-plus years in these units. I want to say in conversation with, we have a staff member that is skilled and retired from the commercial heating and cooling, and he had recommended that this price was more than fair. We also have RW Mead is the one service provider that actually answers our calls and comes out and provides service. We've actually tried to get competitors to bid for the contract, and they're not responding to our requests. So
Are they the ones that installed it in the first place? Do we know?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know if they've installed it. We've been working with RW Mead for at least 10 plus years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor. Okay. Yeah. At least 10 years, if not 15 to 20.
Okay.
But you just said the unit's only 3 years old, right?
No, the unit is I want to say is probably 5 to 10 years old, but we've been working with Mead for longer than that. So Mead's familiar with our building.
What did you say was a few years old? Someone said 2 years, and you said a few, which is 3, so only one more. What are we talking about there?
I would say they're halfway. They're approaching the halfway of their life cycle, which I specifically asked because, hey, we're spending $5,000 on 2 components. What is the cost to actually heat one of those things up there, take that one down, do everything that has to be done? And I mean, it was an easy decision.
50 to 60,000.
It's 10% of the cost, and I think that we're lowballing that at $50,000. So.
And they evaluated the problem, so to not a guess, they know what needs to be done.
Specifically
They're gonna
those 2
repair it.
pieces.
There's a warranty, I'm assuming, with their work?
I will provide that in my Friday feedback then.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Councilman Shepard.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes,
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
thanks. We will have the repairs for the air conditioner taken care of. Now we'll move on to consideration of approving the purchase of replacement streetlights.
Mayor, I move to approve the purchase of 2 sets of downtown decorative lights, poles, and fixtures from Gray Bar in the amount of $16,938.94.
Correction.
83.
Can I amend it?
Yeah,
Do you want to amend it? It's 83.
you're close. They look alike.
Oh,
when you
83.
squint.
There we
Yeah.
go. Okay. Second.
I never wear reading glasses. Leave me alone.
Does anyone want to speak to this decorative lighting? And do we only need 2 by the description that was given? We routinely have a set of 2 in storage in the event of knockdowns. We are currently understocked and need to make this acquisition in order for DTE to be able to contract replacements for future knockdowns. Is 2 enough if you're having a difficulty getting parts?
If you are willing to tack on a third one, I will gladly accept that because we do have a need for having 2 in stock, and then 1 is, I believe, in need as we speak. So I was going to come back to the council with a third one, but since you are so inclined and interested, I would greatly appreciate amending that to be 3, and we'll do the public math offline.
Madam Mayor, I'll change my motion to 3,
Okay.
Support.
and you do the math later.
With a number to fall in line with the 16,983.94 plus 1. No more, no crazy math. Don't be worried, anyone, right?
Yes, sir, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes,
Councilmember Sampson.
Yep.
Councilmember Shepard.
Yes.
great.
Three it
We will
is.
have new light, oh, you should highlight, thank you, we'll get the new light poles. You might want to highlight the exciting portion that some people are probably very interested in, that you can also get LED samples to see how LED works to bring our costs down somewhat.
No, we are actually staff is going to look at the LED samples to see which best comport with the high-pressure sodium vapor that we have
Color,
to
you're talking about
complement
the
them.
hue.
Yes. And then from that, we are also looking at the cost savings over time, how many we have to replace to make them all LED, and we'll be coming back to you with a proposal on that in time, so.
So when you convert them to LED, is it just, does it require some kind of conversion kit, or is it just an LED?
I can't speak to,
Fixture.
these ones now, this new decorative pole is specifically only LED, to convert the other poles throughout the city, I'd have to ask Trevor on that one.
Look who's
Thank you,
here.
Trevor.
So they no longer make the lights like we have now. So we don't have a choice but to go to LED. So we're going to get 3 samples of different type of colors in the light, put them up, pick which is closest to what we have, so we don't have one light that's like a
Right.
white light, and that's not what we have. But moving forward, we're going to get a price on switching all of them over for the cost savings in energy to LED. And that there's 3 different options. One is just a simple kit that will go in there. Another one is changing out the whole bulb. And then the third one was a little more something we probably won't do because it's going to cost more money. But I was told we're in a good position because all 3 options can work for us.
Good,
So at the end of the day, well, best price, everything should work.
great.
Have you driven down 9 Mile at night in Hazel Park? They got all,
Not in a while.
they got all LEDs and it's blinding. I mean, they're way too bright.
That's
Just watch for that.
so the white light would probably be
Yeah.
what those are, and I wasn't really thinking going that route because we don't have a white light now.
Okay.
We stick one white light in there, and people are going to think we're losing our mind. So
Yeah, there's way better reasons for them to think that. Don't give them a light bulb.
well, I
Make
don't want
it
to give them
easy.
more reasons.
Okay, thank you, Trevor.
Yep.
Did we vote on that already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Then, let's discuss the employee review of City Clerk August Gitschlag. For those of you who play along, you know that this has been on our agenda several times, and it's always been held up because some of us were not exactly satisfied with the document that was provided to do the review. And then clearly this is important because our city attorney found time to write another email to us telling us that this is our responsibility to review our employee, and we're negligent in that, and we do understand that. So I open up conversation, open up discussion of how people want to address this.
Pick a day and let's evaluate them, and let's use the approved 20-01 policy. That's the only one on record right now, and that was approved. Unless we're going to go through the pains of changing it, just to go with what we got, and if something's not applicable, put an A on it.
I think that was my problem. I'll just say that it's a waste of time to evaluate someone with a tool that doesn't actually address what they do.
We got history. We did the city manager. We also did Stacy with that same one.
I wasn't part of that one, and it was written for a city manager, so that was appropriate. I looked at it again. We could use anything. I know what the real impetus of this issue is. I would personally require some information before we move on with that one. So if you guys want to just set a date to do the review of Mr. Gitschlag and utilize the form as you suggested, but people can come and bring questions that may be more appropriate, then we will address them that way. Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Gitschlag?
No, I figure that you're going to use that form, you're going to ask any other questions and bring up anything else you want to bring up anyway.
Correct.
That's just how it's going to go. So we try to give you one that was geared more towards clerks to make that easier, and it doesn't matter to me, whatever you want to use.
I just thought.
You're going to tell me what you want to tell me no matter what the paper says, and that's fine.
Well, the idea is to review someone to their roles and responsibilities, not just to a generalized list. I mean, it makes no sense, literally no sense, to ask you questions about things that are not within your scope of responsibility, and then, especially when there are things within your scope of responsibility that we really do need to ensure that we're all on the same page for. So I guess I would like to see a working document that is actually a working document for you and for future reviews. If we are going to do a review with you every year, I feel like we could start something, develop it, and build on it for the future, but that would be my idea, is to actually create something, and it shouldn't even be difficult. We just haven't had the time to do it because other things have come up. And I know why you want to do the review. I understand that. But Anyone else?
Let's pick a date.
May I suggest after the next council meeting? Or?
Before the
city
next
attorney-
council meeting?
Or
Either
before the
one.
next council meeting, either way?
After's fine by me.
After's fine.
Yeah, after works. So, yeah, I'd like to get this over with, not over with, I don't mean to say it like that.
I'd like to get this over with, Councilman.
You want to close
I would
session?
like to complete the task that's set in front of us.
Like closed session.
So as soon as possible. The 20th would be work for me.
What
I'll
is
do
it?
it afterwards.
20th.
20th. I make a motion, we
Right, it's the 20th.
pick the 20th for August's evaluation.
It'll be closed session after
Closed
the
session
council meeting.
after council meeting.
At the end of the agenda, in other words?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the agenda.
But a closed session.
Closed session at the end of the.
Absolutely.
Wait a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gitschlag. You will get your dream of having a review on September 20th.
You think I'm looking forward to this?
Clearly, it meant enough to get people engaged, to get it back on the agenda, which is fine. Next item is consideration of the first reading of an ordinance to govern rental units. And since we're back on the rental unit topic, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to allow for public comment during this topic. Therefore, if anyone would like to engage, you have the opportunity to do so by raising your hand or something. That way we can incorporate your comments and concerns at the appropriate time. Would you agree to that?
Is that a motion?
It is.
I'll second it as long as we put in some kind of a time limit,
What would you like the time limit to be?
like 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Okay, are you going to be the timekeeper? Thank you.
I gotta go.
Agreed?
I'll be the
4 minutes
timekeeper
per
and clerk.
question.
4 minutes, okay. Councilman Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Newshine?
And good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, and thank you for that motion. Actually, what I was going to suggest, I obviously have had the pleasure of speaking with Ms. Redmond considerably over since the first time this item came about, and actually I've thought her comments and research were very helpful for a myriad of reasons. And what my suggestion was going to be prior to you suspending the rules, which actually that's one way of addressing it, was going to be to perhaps consider handling these two items along with the balance of it as a workshop probably someplace, just to be able to have the conversation. But this is also a way to do it. It's entirely your pleasure. The reason why I was going to recommend a workshop, even though we're prolonging this but that's okay. Sometimes we're supposed to just in order to get it right. These proposed ordinances that I have from the get-go, if you remember, and it was some time ago now, the conversation that at least that we had, my thought was always to have these as limited as possible to deal with registration. Certainly when we're talking about rental ordinances, be they the long-term, a year or more, or short-term such as Airbnb, there's a lot of legislation that could occur from this body concerning both items. My thought was always to do it piecemeal because it can be so broad and it becomes too much to tackle sometimes. And we see this here, obviously, some of the comments that Ms. Redmond made, which I thought are actually valid, deal with zoning. Well, this doesn't deal with zoning as it's presented here today, but perhaps council needs to have that conversation. So I don't know what council's pleasure is in that regard, whether you wanted to consider these items, or listen to the rest from Ms. Redmond in this setting, or whether you wanted to consider perhaps doing some sort of a far more open format workshop where we sort of air out any of our thoughts, any thoughts that council may have, any thoughts that residents may have. It's entirely your pleasure.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. We remove it from the agenda and make it at a workshop within the next couple of weeks. And that way we can advertise it, and a lot of people, really advertise, a lot of people can come and talk about it during the thing, and we won't have a time limit.
Councilmember Sampson, would you consider doing that with respect to both items? I think
Both items. Both items.
So,
Support.
Can I ask a question since you already voted on that? Would you be considering it as like you said, as a package with zoning included, or is this just going to be an ordinance and then we would go to the?
So my thought, and I think what council is proposing, would be to do a workshop where we talk about the entire plethora of it without voting on it. And we can, but obviously any zoning-based ordinance, even with respect to rentals, would have to be initiated at the planning commission, right? There would be somewhat a different track. Ultimately, all lands here, obviously, but the track is somewhat different. But I think the conversation on the workshop makes sense to be able to do on all items.
Do we want to add a date to the motion, or you want to let the mayor select a date?
Let me ask, is there any pending legislation that we need to be conscientious of as we set this date?
So, yeah, there's House bills that have been floating around for some times, several competing ones. One in particular has gotten all the attention, as you may have heard, and I think Ms. Redmond mentioned as well. But nothing, I don't know that anything is pressing us at this particular point in time. And one of the practical realities, whether we like it or not, concerning legislation coming from our legislator that would ultimately be signed by the governor if it were to go that route, it would preempt anything that we did on that particular topic. So I think, and the reason why I brought this to council was to be preemptive of that, to have something. If we're preempted, we're preempted. But at least we were doing our bit to be able to get ahead of it. So I guess that long answer to tell you, no, nothing pressing.
Okay. No, and that was my concern too. Whatever we come up with, could it be, and you use the term preempted. I agree with that. We've got a lot that we would need to discuss. Obviously, we'd like to have input of Planning Commission. We have 2 members currently in the chambers right now who maybe they have an idea that would also fit their schedule, although it would be up to us ultimately. And as I'm quickly trying to go through my calendar, which is full for the month of September, unfortunately, it's all baseball, as is usual. I don't know, I'd like to hear whatever dates work.
Yeah, obviously on our end, we would be available, but it's up to council and.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you, so there are the other bills that I found related to it. I don't know if that's something that would be helpful to because I don't, like you said, we don't know if it's gonna come, sorry.
Just so that we record it, for nothing else.
Okay, so the other bills that I found just in going on to the Michigan legislature and kind of doing a quick search, there's a few other bills just to consider. Again, they might or might not preempt, right? Just for you to have in your mind and maybe research a little bit on for the workshop would be 5465, 5521, 5466 and 880.
Can you send all that to us?
I'm sure you're familiar as well, so I'm not trying to overstep.
Not at all, on
but-
the contrary. Actually, I'm happy to collect all of it, all
Sure.
the information that you have, and we can bring it all together to council, put it as
So
part of.
if you
the
could send it to
agenda
us
for
a week
workshop.
before so we can read it.
Right, and these are kind of still, they're just as up in the air as 4722, right?
Yes.
So we're not, again, I'm not here to make rules or decide things, but it's kind of hard to write an ordinance based on what might be when you have 6 different bills that might be, right? But it's just something that we could at least consider. A lot of it more has to do with taxes and things like that. But even considering multifamily zoning, I know that you put a provision in there so that people can't sublease, but taking a multifamily unit and being able to turn that into an Airbnb, it might be something we might want to, or even in a commercial way, zoning in that. So maybe, I don't,
Just
sorry.
come prepared. We'll set the date. I'd like the date to be
Okay,
in September.
I didn't know if you wanted ideas on
No,
what I'm going
just
with.
Send emails.
It's a
'cause
workshop.
Okay.
so it'll
Yeah,
be-
it's a
it'll be
workshop, so
open.
Okay.
that will be the perfect forum
Yeah.
for what you're doing right now, right? For bringing all of those things together. And I know I did quite a bit of research on this as well, and there are a lot of communities that are fighting within themselves for things that they determined not too long ago because things are not necessarily how they appeared or how they had wished that they would appear, right? And we all received an email about a week ago from a resident who's concerned about a home in her neighborhood or on her, real close to her, that is being rented out. There are a lot of things to consider, and we should take our time for that, and also for our regular rentals, because it affects our community. It affects, sadly, the erosion of a community often when these things take place, and we all care about making sure that doesn't happen. So we appreciate you, Erin. You are
Thank
so
you.
diligent
Thank
in
you.
what you do. We thank you for what you came prepared for today, and we'll make sure we engage you on another day when we set this up. But can you please work with your calendar and find a date in September?
I have 9/12, 9/19, 9/27, and 9/29. So none of those are Tuesdays. They're either Mondays, Wednesday, or Thursday. So I have to go back and take a look and see what I have.
Madam Mayor, is there any inclination to have it before the council meeting on the 20th?
I don't think that would give us enough time, personally. I would like it so that people from planning and zoning, I'd like to offer it up to planning and zoning, and anybody else, of course, any of our other boards or commissions, but I feel like it would be really wise to have them in, and try and make it that. But with everyone work schedules, I know everyone will go to work all day and then come and do this at night, and you guys will just be here longer. I apologize for that, but I think that 7 o'clock or something is just the best time to
What-
capture the most people.
How about the 19th? Are you good 19th?
I'm good on the 19th.
What day is that?
It's a Monday, isn't it?
Monday.
Okay.
I'll add that to my motion.
So, Monday, the 19th at 7.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be holding a workshop to discuss our rental ordinances that are in the works. And we open up to all of Clausen residents and any board and commission member, or anybody who wants to spend the night doing that with us. Come on over, it'll be fun.
That's Monday, the 19th
Monday,
of
the
September
19th.
at
7 PM.
7 PM, just so that we're all on the same page.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to old unfinished business. And we're going to move right past old unfinished business
No,
to
you're the gentleman.
public comments. I got this.
He's
I'm going to review that on you when we do your review, that you jump my ship. Don't worry about him.
I
You and
want
I
to
are
thank
good.
the city manager for that presentation he gave on 8D, but one question I got about that. Was there anything that you came across that said you had to provide the candidates to the city council before you picked one?
No, sir.
Okay. And the other one is Selfridge and Phillips. Have we done anything on a bid or anything on?
That's in work, sir, yes, sir.
Okay, when do you think you'll have something back?
I will give you an update at the next meeting, and I'll provide it to the council members in the Friday feedback.
Because I don't want to spend all my
Sure.
Tuesday nights here.
We
What
enjoy
else do
you.
you have to do?
We like
I got
having you
another
here.
life.
So, Mr. Raker, during our last meeting, AEW was here 3 weeks ago. Did they come back with anything? We were discussing the cost increases and the potential of holding off projects, and we stated we would hope to not have to hold off projects and still get something in this year. Have you heard anything in return?
He had requested some information, I believe, for BidNet, so I'll get an update for him. I know he is moving forward with trying to make it a reality for this construction season, and I'll have more details for you on Friday.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, and would anyone else like to speak for public comments, items not on the agenda?
Pamela Bach, 1305 Kenilworth. I came to the last council meeting, had some questions regarding our ordinance or lack thereof regarding dog bites, and you asked to have someone check into it. I've not had anyone contact me. So I'm wondering what the status is or if there is one.
There is a status. Our attorney actually provided something in our packet, and when it gets to his city attorney report, which is now, if you'd like to stand there and have a conversation with him, he will be happy to address it with you.
I can wait. Thank
Okay.
you.
No, it's time, so I don't think there's anyone.
It's literally now. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, I wrote, obviously, 2 communications to council concerning items. One of the items was from the gentle lady with whom I had the pleasure of speaking at last time, as well as we spoke on the phone, I believe, following that meeting the next day. And So I'll take that item first. It dealt with respect to the animal ordinances, anything that we have concerning ordinances with respect to animal nuisances. We have an ordinance, and I related that to council, and I believe the young lady was aware of our ordinance as well. I know that from my conversation with her, she had done her homework very well. And then I also provided to council the Dangerous Animals Act 426 of 1988, which is what the state of Michigan has concerning the topic. That we can always provide, and I think that was the message in my letter to council was, we can always provide additional ordinances if council deems it appropriate. I think that ordinance, in my humble opinion, does cover the entire, it does offer our police officers the ability, when they deem it appropriate, to issue a citation to a person on facts that the gentle lady relayed last time at the council meeting. If council wanted to be more specific, council could always be more specific and have something addressing, precisely at the local level. The difference between that proposed legislation to be generated here from this body would be that we would be limiting ourselves to a maximum of a 93-day misdemeanor. The Oakland County one is, depending on the nature of the offense, has sort of a span from 1 year misdemeanor to beyond, depending on injury. I think, obviously, there's one caveat, and I think where the gentle lady is correct. Sometimes when our Clawson police officers, or any police officers out there, seek to have a warrant authorized at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office for an item such as based on a set of facts such as the gentle lady's set of facts from the previous meeting, sometimes they do run into issues that deal with, just, I don't want to call it bureaucracy, but that's probably what it is, in the sense that Oakland County does deal with, and the prosecutor's office there deals with a lot larger issues, more important issues, not to minimize the gentle lady's issue, but just they deal with murder and so on and so forth, and sometimes smaller factual scenarios, important as they are, do fall by the wayside. So in that regard, if council were to deem it appropriate, you could legislate. And if you request that of us, we, of course, will provide you something specific with respect to dog bites or whatever council deems appropriate. But this ordinance that the county has would cover that scenario as it existed.
Can you tell me what the ordinance states?
Ma'am, I can share it with you. I did, I can either email or, do we have a printed copy of the entire agenda?
I'm just curious
No.
because everyone's...
It's a rather lengthy one, that's
No,
why I'm
no, I know.
hesitating
Yeah,
right
no,
now.
and I understand that. I'm just curious because everyone's like, it's not my problem. The county says that, the animal control says that, the city says that. It's not my problem.
Well, and I certainly understand that, and I think that's my my assessment with respect to some of the imprimaturs of bureaucracy on the upper level. Here at the city level, we have a specific ordinance that deals with other aspects. In a way, I think some of the terms that we utilized earlier apply here. When the state of Michigan legislates on a particular topic, they preempt the area. They occupy the space, legally speaking. Mm-hmm. So could we go in there and legislate? Certainly. We could legislate by providing more protection, right, for the individual. In this case, one of the concerns that I would have would be providing with more protection at a lower level, but would be taken away sort of from the felony realm if the injury rises up to that level. Council will always have the ability to address the issues as it deems necessary. The law covers the area. The humans may be the problem in the process, not the law.
So I will say that the only reason I am here is because your office suggested that I come to the council meeting and ask that you address this as a council.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think that's important, absolutely.
To request that you change the ordinance at the city level. That wasn't my idea.
Oh, no, ma'am. I think the conversation, I think, that I think your voice is important as any resident's voice in this city. As to whether council changes their ordinance or not, obviously, council will not be changing ordinances solely on account of one individual, no matter who the individual is. But if council deems it appropriate, based on everything they've heard from you, and I think it's important that they hear from you, as they have, I think if they opt to do so, they will do so. Absolutely, ma'am.
Now, Rennis,
Yes, sir.
if I caught you properly, we can legislate some ordinance to this dog bite issue or anything else, but you're saying we're limited in the amount of penalty we can impose?
Yes, sir.
And what is that limit again?
Up to 93 days in the, of incarceration. And actually, this kind of specific issue usually falls within the 90-day. There's some nuance, I can explain that a little later, up to $500 in fines and costs.
Okay. And so the benefit of this, though, is the resident will be dealing not with Oakland County, 1.2 million people, and whatever bureaucracy is involved. Rather, she's dealing with an 11,000 people city. So we can move quicker and more effectively for a resident, but you're saying we're capping the level of penalty that could be imposed on the person.
I think that is all correct. I'll add one slight caveat to it. I think, ultimately speaking, a resident of our city, as our gentle lady here this evening, will always be dealing with a Clawson police officer on the ground. And that all we're providing is to that officer the choice as to whether he issues a citation under the city ordinance, our ordinance, in which case, presently speaking, he would be issuing from that ordinance that I've provided to you this evening on my letter, or whether that same police officer from Clawson would issue a citation pursuant to the Oakland County's statute, which I've provided as well. Now, there's two ways an arrest can be effectuated, which is where the issue usually comes in. If a police officer sees the crime occurring in front of his eyes, he can effectuate arrest right then and there, which means he can either cuff you and or issue a citation. It's the same action, even though two different actions, it's the same thing. So if someone from the Clawson Police Department were to see the gentle lady being bitten in her arm, they would issue a citation, either state law or Clawson ordinance, their pleasure. If they do not see the crime occur in front of their eyes, but are called thereafter, perform an investigation, now they can no longer simply arrest on the spot. They must seek a warrant pursuant to same thing, either our Clawson ordinance or the state law. When it comes to the answer, I think, to your question, which works, if they submit their request to our office, we turn it around the next day. Worst case scenario, they have either a denial if we don't think that a crime has occurred, or authorized charges based on those, the facts that they presented to us. Then that police officer has to take that warrant that we've signed, as well as someone that we've signed, has to take it to a judge of our district court. That judge has to sign off as well. Upon both signatures from the prosecuting attorney as well as the judge of our district court, the warrant is valid and then it can be issued. The person can be summoned to our district court. Case is triggered. If the officer opts to go the route of Oakland County, then instead of our office, local 11,000 citizens of the city of Clawson, you're dealing now with Oakland County prosecuting attorney, 120 plus attorneys, staff, bureaucracy, so on and so forth. They may be receptive, they may not. There's some practical decisions that occur there. But ultimately, the police officer on the ground makes the determination. And it's his determination and his guidance based on his training that determines where it goes and how they pursue it, whether there's something they wish to pursue or not.
May I say, that's all fine and dandy, but this occurred on a Sunday, so Clawson police were not involved. And that's another gray area where this fell in the cracks.
Ma'am, I read the police report in your matter, and it was a Clawson police officer that issued the report. Now, I don't know who came on the scene.
Troy.
But, a Clawson police officer was involved in the writing of the report. I know that.
So does the resident have any ability to not allow our police officers be the determining factor?
No, ma'am.
Right now, the officer only has one option. Is that correct? The Oakland County route.
No, both.
There's a local ordinance?
They can decide to do nothing. They can opt for the local ordinance that I presented to you if they believe that the facts of what transpired fit that ordinance, or they can opt the Oakland County route as well. The Oakland County law that I presented to you is broader. It covers a larger plethora of factual scenarios that could potentially come before a police officer in our city.
So we currently have in place the ordinances required to, shall we say, expedite the process.
We could if the officer deemed necessary.
We could, but we don't currently, is that?
No, we could. The officer in this case opted not to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron McCauley, 1008 Selfridge. Don't we have an animal control officer assigned to us from Troy that would get involved with this situation?
No, sir, we have our own animal control officer.
And what does he do in a case like this?
She is a fine lady that does whatever is necessary in a case like
Has
this.
he gone out and investigated this case?
I don't know that, sir, but I presume.
Why do we put the burden on the police when we have an animal control officer?
The police responded on the scene.
We contract animal control to Oakland County. We don't have our own animal control officer. I think you may be thinking of code enforcement.
I'm sorry, you're right. I apologize, Nick, yes.
Correct. And code enforcement is only Monday through Thursday, but the police they're obviously available 24/7.
Yeah, my apologies, sir.
But
I
as a
misled you.
follow-up, shouldn't somebody contact the animal control to look into this case?
They were,
Yeah.
sir, they were involved.
Who is?
They were contacted and they were involved, the animal control.
They were?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Nick, for that correction. My apologies.
Should we be providing some guidance to our officers as far as when's an appropriate route to choose, whether it's the local ordinance or the county level?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we do trainings nonstop with respect to that, and I don't know that there was, again, officers on the scene will make determinations, and sometimes we will disagree with them, and sometimes, most of the time, we will not. With respect to this, a scenario such as this one, the appropriate route, in my mind, without addressing the facts per se, because that would be inappropriate, I think would have been to go the Oakland County route. That's, I believe, what transpired.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Any other public comment? I should have asked before. Okay. Mr. Nushai, do you have anything else for us this evening?
No, ma'am, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, well, would you like to address the other letter that you sent us in case those residents are looking on as well?
Yes, thank you. Actually, thank you for reminding me. Also, we provided, there was a residence at our last meeting that talked about bamboo. I'm actually far more torn on that issue than on this one, perhaps. I think it's perhaps an issue that we need guidance from council, because even though I gave you a letter with sort of my thought nestled therein, I think your guidance is required. But I do think harmful vegetation is trickier to legislate, I think, because of the invasive species that we have in our state, and it becomes problematic to pursue any proper legislation. But I'll take council's guidance with respect to it. We do have currently ordinances that deal with harmful vegetation, and we certainly have it both at our local level as well as we have, there's other, the state code does have additional ordinances or, statutes that cover the area. I think, in my mind, this body should probably, for the time being, without more information, I think we're covered and we should stay away from legislating on the topic. I thought I listened carefully. I've had personally the same issue that that the speakers from the last meeting of council had, and I know how frustrating it is. But if this body were to start legislating neighbor issues with respect to harmful vegetation, such as roots of bamboos and things of that nature, we would be it's a tricky area to come into and start opining. I think if council were to have any inclination to doing so, I would again recommend that we do so by way of having a workshop ahead of time before we start opining or before I present anything to you, so we could gather your thoughts, we could gather your directions and your opinions on the matter. I know that some of you obviously are more passionate about this area than others, and I think we would rely on your guidance. So, you saw my letter. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond, but I think that's probably a process that makes sense for the future.
Don't we address harmful vegetation in other areas,
We do.
right? Right, so can't you just throw another category in
Yeah,
to that
and
same
I think-
thing? Because I think poison ivy was an issue with neighbors. You can't stop that stuff either, so.
And if you noticed, I used the term with respect to Phragmites, which are those reeds that you see now popping up all over our state. And I think the example that I used there, again, and maybe it's not a perfect example, I'm certainly cognizant of that, but it's an example that I think we need, this body needs to consider. A situation where if you have Phragmites in those reeds, those noxious reeds, in your lot somewhere in your house, you can't control their spread. If we say that, if we now legislate, this body legislates and ordains that you must do something about those reeds so that they don't affect your neighbor. Well, the state of Michigan doesn't have a solution for that problem. What we're doing now is basically giving color of law to one neighbor forcing another neighbor to deal with a problem that frankly has no solution currently. So I think I consider that difficult, I think, from the premise of legislating for a body such as this one. I'm happy to take your guidance. I'm happy to take your thoughts. But again, I think it requires a lot of careful consideration. Easy enough to do to say we hereby add bamboo to this list of harmful vegetation. The simplest things in the world. Enforcing it, I think you're going to have our lovely Barb Chambers in tears by the time it's all said and
Yeah, but she
done.
doesn't have because I had a conversation with Barb on what direction to go in. And it's tough because I'm torn both ways. Obviously, I'm concerned about what's happening with the neighbor, but at the same time, on property rights. So my concern, I think, is different with Phragmites because that is that's an invasive species that promulgates, just as we were talking earlier before council, vagrant. It's not purposely planted.
Correct.
The difference in this situation is that the bamboo was purposely planted with the intent that it was providing some type of screen and has now gotten out of control. Now, should it be that something that was purposely planted be the burden of the neighbor that is not enjoying that and also having the damaging effect of their foundation as a result of how aggressive this is? Now, the problem, though, is bamboo is not identified as SISMA as being an invasive. So, and it's not problematic. So that goes back to, okay, how far can we reach? Right. It's almost, we just did the landscaping ordinance last year. Maybe we need to include some other things as well with that. And I don't know if that needs to go back to planning in order to reevaluate
And it's wise.
that.
I think, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, and some pathway, because obviously you need, I think, a chorus of voices, a lot more voices of the community, and planning would be a great location to start, I think, with respect to an issue like that, because that's a natural location to start it with. Not a simple issue to resolve.
The legislation or the ordinance that we crafted last year was specific to public spaces.
Yes.
There were some existing ordinances that were for private, but at the same time, we stayed away from that, knowing that, okay, if we have a standard within the public domain that is one that could be followed by private citizens, that would maybe as a guide. So I don't know, if we do that as included in the public ordinance, perhaps that could be viewed as, okay, we probably shouldn't do that.
That would be a little problematic, I think, in my mind, obviously. But at the same time, also, one thing to keep in mind, and obviously I couldn't provide advice to the lovely couple from last meeting, but, to opine generally, I could say that any such homeowner would have a cause of action, a civil cause of action against any abutting property owner to be able to deal with the specific issue at hand, as opposed to this body legislating on behalf of the citizens of the city of Clawson and giving color of law to that action.
So they do have relief?
Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
That kind of solves, from my perspective, the personal property rights
Yes,
issue.
yes, sir.
Anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Any questions for our city attorney from anyone? Okay, then we'll move on to our city manager's report. Mr. Raker?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and council, I'm happy to share with you that the city of Clawson has been recognized by the State of Michigan Tax Commission for the outstanding achievement of receiving a perfect score on the 2022 Audit of Minimum Assessing Requirements, known as the AMAR review. This, in layman's terms, is recognition that our border review, along with our ordinances and our assessing services provided through Oakland County, collectively serve to do an outstanding job ensuring meeting the requirements of the Michigan State Tax Commission. So great thank you to our border review, who, as you know, is appointed by this body. I'd also like to extend some public appreciation to our police, fire, and DPW responders on last Monday's storms, August 29th, where we had numerous downed wires, trees, and residents without power. A couple public service announcements. The wood chip track will receive fresh wood chips in advance of the upcoming fall events. DPW will have a crew taking down dangerous trees on Fridays as a method to catch up on that lengthy list. And we will be acquiring the playground grade wood chips for the playground areas. Pending your questions, that's my report.
Did you say DPW is taking down trees on Fridays?
Yes, ma'am.
What's up with that? Fridays?
There's work to be done.
Thought nobody wanted to work on Friday around here recently.
Well, there are some, it's a small crew, so.
Thank you, DPW workers who are willing to work on Friday. We appreciate you.
Thanks for taking care of that quickly.
Sir.
And thank you to the fire department for blocking my street last week when the power lines were down. And I don't mean thank you for blocking my street. I mean, thank you for blocking my street and making a safe environment for my family and for everyone else who was out there trying to walk home from Selfridge, Phillips. But, Mr. Raker, I sent you a list of items that I was looking for information on about 2 weeks ago. Any idea if I can get any of that back at some point?
You're gonna have to refresh my
I don't even,
list.
it was a long list. It had to do with lots of things. So, I mean, not hard things, just informational things that I wanted. With that look, I will just resend it to you and
Please
expect
do.
that I'll hear something back. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions for our city manager? Anyone?
I do. To dovetail with the removal of trees, we also had, I thought there was going to be an inventory of those that were recently planted and that had at least shown signs of not having survived transplant.
We did have, I think it is Marine City arborist, I believe. They're out of Marine City.
Yeah.
They did do a site visit, and I'll add the specifics to that visit to your Friday feedback as well. But they did show up, and they did an assessment. I'll get the specifics from Trevor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Would you like to share with us the status of the operations in the treasurer's office?
Actually, it's kind of status quo. We're still interviewing for the two receptionist positions. Sorry, I'm categorizing that incorrectly.
Administrative clerk.
Pardon me. The two administrative clerk positions along with the one that is down at DPW. So we have 3 positions that are open. We do have a healthy candidate pool. We did have some interviews last week. We had an ideal candidate who we couldn't come to an agreement on what their starting wage was. So we are back at interviews, and we have 3 ideal candidates that we're further vetting.
So
at this time.
3 positions,
2 in the clerk's office, 2 in the treasurer's office, and then the 1 DPW.
so the
position for
treasurer is
Lisa.
1 clerk or 1 admin and
2
then a
admins.
deputy?
No, 2 admins.
What happened to the discussion about a deputy?
That was getting creative to potentially attract other candidates. So right now, we're looking at strictly the 2 clerical positions.
Full-time for both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So there was a discussion point when discussing the treasurer's office, that previously there was a treasurer and a clerk.
Correct.
And now we decided to go with an additional clerk.
Correct.
We've run with 2 people for a long time. It didn't seem clear to me what the full process was determining that we needed 3. As
Ideally,
something
it was said that we need kind of like a permanent float position, which the DPW contract does call for that, which it is not filled. So that may still be the final solution. But right now, to get back on track, we believe that we do need 2 full-time people. 2 full-time people in addition to the treasurer.
Why would you not go for the deputy treasurer? So you'd have like 3 levels of staffing.
Well, I mean, that is, there's nothing to say that we can't do that. I mean, there was one candidate that may be.
I think it's right now, just based on some of the qualifications we have for the candidate pool, we think that we would be more equipped to bring in 2 clerks, train them, give them the opportunity to grow here, and then give them the opportunity from starting off at that original administrative clerk position.
Are you having a hard time getting people to accept the position based on the compensation that you're offering? Because there's probably a big difference between, well, we talked about adding a deputy, right? That was where we were when we began this, which is why I'm asking. That range would be different, responsibility would be different than your 2 admin type people. So if you had someone who was good, would they not be fitting for that? Like if you say, when you say something, we did not come to understanding, I'm assuming that means one thing, and that means one thing.
Ideally, it would be helpful to bring 2 people in at that position and let someone naturally grow and assimilate into that position with the tutelage and mentorship of the current treasurer. So that person then has that incentive to work underneath the treasurer to eventually assimilate to the deputy position. That would be the ideal situation, but.
I mean, they're going to be learning either way, right? Is it? And clearly we take a lot of leeway here with offering people positions and based on whether or not they have capacity to necessarily be in those great positions, right? Like we're generous here with a lot of things and that's a great thing. But it seems like it would make more sense to go levels, but that's your responsibility. So I was just curious. I was curious what happened with it.
Nope, that's where we're
Especially
at.
since that was the conversation initially, that we would do a deputy and an admin.
We are this is where we're at. That's the update as far as those 2, with the intent that potentially a candidate would assimilate into a deputy role at a later time.
And then you have to fill the position at DPW also.
Right.
Okay.
I can circle back again. I think you answered my question, but right now we're moving towards a 3-person treasurer's
Correct.
office.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I raised the question, in the past, it was a 2-person division. We're going to 3. You said that 3rd person might float between that position and DPW?
That was,
Did I hear you right?
under the contract, the collective bargaining agreement, there is room for a part-time float person, and there's room for a full-time float person. So that might end up being that evolution. And that was something that just became evident to us probably a couple weeks ago. So there's actual standing. The union just hasn't given us a hard time about it, actually.
So I know one of my questions to you that I'd sent was to help us understand, when we do the budget, it's just this much is allocated for this department for how many positions. It's not broken down by wage or it's not broken down by compensation costs. I'm interested in seeing that because I'm curious how we have money to do certain things and then like where are all these costs hidden? I just want to see where the dollars are for the staffing that we're talking about putting into place, for the increases that we've meted out and for those that are wanting to come. I would just like to know if those are the best uses of our dollars that we're budgeting for departments right now, or if we're just being extremely considerate to the people around us and maybe we should be making other choices.
I will have all that information for you when it comes time for the budget amendment, which may be at the next meeting or the first one in October.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Just now that we've got the school year started and we have a new superintendent, has there been any discussion with the school board superintendent on trying to see eye to eye on some things? Maybe we need to have a joint workshop at some point in
Yes, sir.
time.
Yes, sir. So Billy Schellenbarger, he's the new superintendent. He will be tentatively scheduled to be at your next city council meeting.
Okay. Great, okay.
And he welcomed us to their groundbreaking, where we all donned nice hard hats and yellow jackets. That was a good time, till the rain came and let us go home. Perfect timing. Any council comments tonight? No. Okay, I just want to say, it's back to school time. Everyone be careful, be considerate in the morning when you're rushing through these streets that are 25 miles per hour and everyone doesn't remember that there's little kids out there again, or parents who are rushing to get their kids on time and are trying to do it the right way. So don't miss those days. I will not say that I do. Clausen Fest was a success, even though I had a personal event that day. I went early and then late. I saw it clean in the beginning and it was clean in the end. I just want to say thank you to Sean, and Charlie for all of the hard work that they put into making something wonderful for our community again. And then Farmers Bob and Julie will still be at the park Sundays through, I believe it's through the end of September. And then, as you know, last week we met with our attorney, Mr. McGinnis, to discuss the George's case. We gave him instructions to submit some information to Mr. George's attorney hopefully for acceptance. He did submit that information. It was not accepted, so we have not moved anywhere on that case. I thought he was going to be here today to share that information, but since that's the only information we have and it was that simple, there was the information. Other than that, I don't have anything. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. Those of you who are at home watching, those who took the time to come in, and for those who are sitting here today, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Milan?
Yes,
Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd? We're adjourned.
thank you.